I absolutely love being around children. Uh, Family reunions, I have a tendency to migrate to the children's table and just kind of visit with the kids. I don't know why. I don't know. It's just been a part of who I am for a long, long time, hanging around with kids and cracking jokes and just having a blast with these children. I mean, sometimes family reunions can be a drag. And you know what I'm saying? Do you remember them as a kid? Wow. And I had this uncle, Uncle Harold. He always made family reunions a blast because he was the cheerful one. He was the one that actually engaged with us. I guess I'm I'm the new Casey Jones at family reunions. I guess Uncle Casey, we used to call him. Um, I used to get involved at church when I was younger. I was involved telling children's stories. Loved doing that. Was involved with Bible school. To this day, there are kids who still call me Panda Pete because of a particular role I played years ago in Bible school. Well, there's one year, though, that sort of stands out. A couple of years ago, I was telling a children's story in church, and I asked uh, a young girl, a relatively shy girl, apparently. I didn't know this, didn't know her, but I asked her a question, and I didn't think I framed it in the wrong way, but I don't know. Maybe I said it too loudly, too harshly. I don't know what I did, but poor girl, she just broke out in tears and ran down off the platform. I mean, I was devastated. I was so embarrassed. Um, Turns out, at the time, she had a personality that was easily shaken. I didn't pick up on that right away. At the time, Natalie was, as the Bible describes, a bruised reed. It didn't take much to break Natalie at the time. She's not like that now, but at the time, it didn't take much to shake her up. Well, anyway, what does it mean when I say bruised reed? Well, I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. You're watching Transforming the World. We are talking about the spiritual attribute, the fruit of the Spirit of gentleness. And we're going to explore how gentleness and a bruised reed come into play. We'll do that in just a moment. I'll be right back. Isaiah chapter 42 describes the nature of Jesus. He calls them there, the header of that section in Isaiah 42. He's talking about God's chosen servant. That's Christ. That's Jesus. And God says, as he's talking about Jesus, he says that Jesus will not shout or raise his voice in public. He will not crush the weakest reed or put out a flickering candle. It's Isaiah 42, verses 2 and 3. As Jesus ministered throughout Israel, he showed incredible gentleness towards those living out on the fringes. Um, the blind, the lame, the sick. There was an incredible amount of gentleness that Jesus demonstrated toward these people. In contrast, for example, Simon the Pharisee, Simon, as Jesus was having dinner in the house of Simon the Pharisee, you see him and his harshness, and yet the gentleness that Christ demonstrates toward a former sinful woman who happened to be crying at his feet. Luke chapter 7. The story is Luke 7:36 through 50. Christ was gentle with the woman who was caught in adultery. John chapter 8. In too many examples to mention, Jesus showed gentleness and tenderness toward those who were physically broken. Even those spiritually broken were treated with gentleness. I mean, Zacchaeus comes to mind, or some of the Pharisees, or the scribes and the teachers of the law as they spoke with Christ. His response to them was actually quite gentle. Rather than scold or become irritated that people were interrupting him, it's the thing, oh, I've got so much to do. What do you want? Christ did not respond in that way. Christ didn't stand up and shout to be heard when he taught. There was a gentleness in the way that Christ conducted himself. He showed gentleness toward those who were held captive by sin. I think the church today really needs to learn this lesson. I honestly do. What the world needs from the church today is a little less judgment and a lot more gentleness. Now, please don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about ignoring sin. I'm not talking about taking things off the sin list. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that as the church proclaims truth, we need to make sure that we are doing it in a gentle way so that a bruised reed is not broken. Am I making sense? Are you following me here? When our first words to someone is condemnation for their sin, we run the risk of snuffing out a flickering candle. We need to learn a little sensitivity toward those whom we meet. And in my case, even the little children. Now, like me, you've probably had a great desire. You probably have a great desire to reach those who are still held captive by sin. This is probably my greatest desire, is for somebody who is still captive by sin to find the freedom and the hope and the love and the peace through a relationship in Jesus Christ. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that a relationship from Jesus Christ is the most freeing thing that a person can do in their life. They are set free from the bondage of sin. They are set free from guilt. Their hate is turned to joy. Anger is turned to love through a relationship with Christ. I know this, you might know this as well. And so my greatest desire is to see somebody who is still being held captive by sin to find that freedom in Christ. But we need to reach them with gentle words and gentle actions. We walk them to the cross, not drag them there. If you get my point. This is how Christ approached us. And I think we need to be just as gentle when we reach out to others as well. A little tenderness, a little gentleness. You don't deny truth. You don't ignore truth. You don't look at a person who's in sin and say, oh, that's okay. You know, it doesn't matter that you've sinned. It does matter. I mean, if God didn't care about our sin, then he certainly wouldn't had to have sent Christ to the cross. That much is true. God cares about sin. He wants to address the sin in our lives. And the only way to address that sin is through faith in Jesus Christ. We don't deny that, but we share it with gentleness. Show a little tenderness towards somebody whose life is a train wreck. That's gentleness. I think the church could use a dose of that today. What about you? Well, anyway, we'll continue to talk about gentleness tomorrow on Transforming the World. I appreciate you spending time with me today. My name is Pastor Greg.